Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton and our very special guest, Mr. Tim Russ. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and we are honoring Nichelle Nichols today. How are you guys doing?
Doing fine.
Doing well.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank
Good
you
to see you.
Glad to be here.
So first and foremost, we were just talking about that awesome stuff behind you. Where'd you get it? The Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Yeah, I got that. I took a trip to Egypt a number of years ago, and I wanted to bring back, a couple of things that sort of, told a story in a sense of what I had witnessed and what I had learned and observed. And since that time, I've learned a great deal more about that country, the ancient history of Egypt. It's fascinating. I'm always fascinated by ancient civilizations in general. Everything from the Aztec, Inca, Maya, all the way to the Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, all the way back to the Sumerians. And I'm fascinated by ancient history. I really can't get enough of it. And that'll include all the way up to the Neolithic, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, Northern Europe, Ireland, England. It just fascinates me. The accomplishments of these civilizations, how long they lasted. I mean, some of these civilizations lasted for, 1,000 years. Some of them lasted for maybe only 100 or 200 years. But what they got accomplished in that time, to me, it's just amazing. I mean, it's like we have, something of a time capsule in some cases. Archaeologists can get a hold of these artifacts and and we can go back in time. We can walk back and try to understand how these people lived, what they believed in, what might have been their culture. The politics of the day and how the structure of their society worked. I mean, it's just fascinating to me. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's great to get an insight to how you think and how what's interests you, Tim, because it informs me on just how you approach life and the kind of detail and the thought process that goes through your head when you're analyzing things, right? Mm-hmm. You bring all of this body and wealth of information to anything you do, no matter what it is, right? And I had the great fortune of being directed by you in the Gods of Men when I had the fortune of working with Nichelle and you.
Yeah. What a great that story. I still love that story.
I was just talking about Of Gods and Men yesterday, and
I love that story.
It takes a while to really appreciate how fun it went, like the turns and the twists. Yes. Tell us about directing that. You directed Cirroc and you directed Nichelle.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us about it? What it was like?
Both of them were amazing. Of course, wonderful to work with, and it was so because of the nature of the story and the path that Nichelle had to take throughout that story. I was very much looking forward to working with her, and I was very pleased to have had the opportunity to work with both of them to make that whole thing happen. It's still my favorite. I don't. Compared to Renegades, I think Gods and Men's a much better story overall. Just the way it's laid out and how it resolves itself, it's a solid story. And she was wonderful to work with. I worked with her in Renegades. I worked with her in that. It's just a pleasure because, she goes back from a time where we had a tremendous amount of turmoil and racial strife and tension in this country, and she lived through all of that, and she worked through all of that, and she did have the opportunity to portray, an African American woman in an officer position on a bridge, a starship. I mean, good Lord! I mean, that was you just didn't see that at that time on television at the time and in films. You just didn't see it. And so she was a pioneer in that, and she was wonderful to work with, just wonderful.
And I've never heard her complain about being a victim of any kind or the struggles that she had. Never heard her voice that and say, "Yeah, it was hard for me." And this,
ever.
She carries herself with this real refined dignity, with this grace, and never wears this victimhood status or the struggles that she had to go up against. Even though we know she had to go up against so much.
Yeah, she has never said a single word about that in that form and that context. You're absolutely right. I didn't even think about that until now. No, she did what she did, and she kept going. She never ever never complained about it. Yeah.
And talking a little bit more about those times, Cirroc and I were talking a couple days ago about Whoopi Goldberg's famous quote. I don't know if you heard it, but it really, for me, when I first heard Whoopi Goldberg's quote, it it really brought it home for me and showed me the impact of what it meant. She said she was, like a girl like 8 or 9 or 10 years old. She was watching TV and Star Trek comes on and her mom's cooking dinner in the kitchen and Whoopi sees Uhura on the bridge. And she said, "Mama, get in here. There's a black lady on TV and she ain't no maid." And hearing that, I mean, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, like, it really puts it into perspective what life was like before Star Trek and what Star Trek and Nichelle did to open that door to where we are right now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's it was revolutionary. We are only just now starting to see, both in feature films and on television and in commercials, you're starting to see interracial couples, you're starting to see mixed marriages, you're starting to see ethnically blended families, you're starting to see minorities in different characters and positions. We elected an African American president. I mean, you're starting to see these changes occur now. And I'd say only in the recent 10 or 15, 20 years, the most. You do start to see a little bit of a march into this. And when you start seeing advertisers doing stuff like that, things are changing because they're all about, making money and they don't want to, offend anyone. So they want to make sure everybody's buying their product. Well, now they're showing a more diversity in our culture. And in many senses that whether it's dealing with the gay issues and characters and whether it's dealing with women who are heavier, that are not just as skinny as well, but they're heavy and showing them in a positive light. I mean, all of these things are happening now. And again, like we were talking about before, cultural changes and evolution are going to happen. There is no stopping them. 20 years from now, this society will be unrecognizable to what we have right now. It will be unrecognizable. It will be very different. And technology will have a huge part in that. But ultimately, we are going to move beyond everything that is here today. This is only transient. Cirroc, you're going to be around plenty of time. That plus, so you're going to see all that. I'll see maybe in the next 20 years. I should be around, hopefully be around and be able to see some of that myself firsthand. Yeah. But wow, what a different time, that we're living in. And Nichelle is a very early pathfinder. We are now seeing some of the results of her work and her exposure in that role that she played. And her position in the media. And this is commercial television, man. There was only 3 stations back then.
Yeah.
Everybody would see her, so it was pretty amazing.
And the power of the imagery here, people don't realize sometimes that, seeing somebody like yourself on screen in a positive way, in a position of respect and a position of authority, and being brought in an intelligent way, it really gives confidence to the viewer. It lets people know, oh, well, there's something out there for me that's higher than these low expectations that are placed upon me.
Right.
And it's important for people to see something positive, to be able to relate to a Barack Obama or a Nichelle Nichols and say, hey, I can be like that. I can be an intelligent Black person and be successful.
100%. It is difficult. It is, culturally, as African Americans, we are the only culture in this country that did not voluntarily immigrate to the United States. And Cirroc, let me say if you agree with me on this, if we had not had slavery, we would not have an African American population of anywhere near the size here. I don't think there would have been an emigration from Africa to the United States voluntarily.
Yeah, very little.
I don't think so. I don't think
so.
No. You would have only had African Americans here or Africans here, either on some kind of business or perhaps going to college. That's it. It would have been minuscule number of us.
It would have been very minuscule, even though we do have records of African Americans being here prior to the slave trade, because they have African Americans, not African Americans, but
just
Black people, Africans, Black people
in the islands,
and also as they were amongst the Native American population, the early Native American population. So there would be an amount here, but it would be very small.
Very small, yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been a very interesting sort of revisionist history, cultural sort of path to see how all of that would have turned out. It would have been very different. I mean, even society in general today would have been very different, even without the African Americans here is a major cultural force, because everybody else who came here voluntarily, and it's a dramatically different thing when you're talking about it. Nichelle's ancestors and yours and mine. I mean, if you did not have that as a background, as a cultural group, the African American culture was never. There was no. I want to say there's no. We didn't come here as a cohesive unit with our own language and our own belief system and our own religion and the freedom to express it and to practice it. And if we decided to do so, to discard it and become assimilated into Western culture, which is, what would have happened on a normal path, but we would have had that foundation. Not only that, the familial foundation as well. Our families would have been intact, as opposed to not being intact. And now when we see this, when we reflected that the families are in many parts of the country in shambles, because there was no that was broken. All of that was completely ripped apart. And over 400 years time, I mean, it's 4 centuries of that. And it makes a huge difference in how the evolution of the culture, in terms of being African American, there isn't a foundation for the African American culture. There's no foundation. And I've been thinking about this the last 10 years or so. I can think, every single culture that comes here has a foundation. The American Indians, even though their culture was taken for the most part away from them, they still have a foundation. They still have a language. They still have a belief system. They still have
culture
that was there. We did not. If we remained in Africa, we would still have our foundation, our tribe, our culture, our belief, our language, whatever it was. If we are taken from that in over 400 years' time, not assimilated into the culture, no, kept separate from that, but yet taken apart, yet not having. So what is the foundation when you say African American? What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Tell me what that means. Is it African? No, it's not. Is it American? No, it's not. It's in between all of that. There's not a foundation. I don't care if you're born here in the last 100 years. Doesn't matter. The origin of the culture in this country, the people who were brought here and then born here, born into that circumstance, is destroyed.
Tim, that brings up a really interesting question. What would you, that being said, and where we are now, and the fact that, the African American culture was kind of cut off at the knees and taken over into America,
right?
And now it's almost like creating your own new foundation over the last few hundred years. What would you like to see the African American culture foundation becoming from here into the future?
Well, from here to the future, we are now, American citizens. We are now part of the Western culture. So obviously, it's what we're fighting for is to be able to thrive, at an equal plane within the Western culture. Because to date, we are still dealing with this now. We still have glass ceilings. We still have this kind of stuff going. Right now, it's raging. Right now, it's right out in the open. It's not even hidden anymore. So that all has to be bred out over time, because as Cirroc knows, even in the past, ancient Greeks took over. It was Egypt first, then the Greeks. Am I right, Cirroc? So the Greeks came in, or is it Greek? The Greek Empire grew.
Then the Romans.
Romans came over and took over Greece, and eventually the Romans took over ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was taken over by the Greeks by Alexander the Great. The Persians came in and installed their Ptolemaic pharaohs, Cleopatra being many of them. There were several Cleopatras. Came over and took over theirs. So all of these cultures over the past, Rome eventually invaded the Celts. They invaded Northern Europe. And their culture was established in place of those. We've had these displacement of cultures throughout the ancient civilizations of the world because of conquering and this kind of thing. When they moved in, they brought all their stuff, their infrastructure, their ideas, their culture, their language, all that stuff came in with them. We've had this kind of upheaval. Now, those people who were indigenous, the original people, the occupants, whether they were Greek, Egyptian, or Celtic, or whatever it might have been, they, in many cases, had to conform to the new overlords that were there, and they had to adapt and adjust. And eventually, over time, they became, what they became. But they are an amalgam of the cultures that conquered them. And
Right.
offhand, I can't think of any culture around the world that hadn't had to deal with that. I don't know. I think perhaps maybe the only ones that the Northern European Norse, the Vikings,
Iceland, maybe.
they took over a great deal of Europe. A great deal of Europe is influenced by them, including all the way to the United States. That concept of the Anglo-Saxon, to my knowledge, historically, there hasn't been anybody that has came back and conquered the Anglo-Saxon and put them to rest. You see what I'm saying? There was not that. That didn't happen that way. So we're going to look at one culture that has, and if we look around the world and we see where most of the power is in the hands of, it is the Anglo-Saxon. That is what we have. That is what we have in this world.
That is what we have. But you are absolutely correct. There hasn't been we haven't seen the guards change, the changing of the guards as far as the ruling class that has been, established since at least the 1600s, right?
Right.
But I do want to say, though, going to your question, Ryan, one of the things that would be key and critical for Black people as a whole going forward is, to me, adapting culturally the idea of education and making that a central theme into our cultural principles. One of the things that we were robbed of, in this slavery, is the ability to learn, the ability to read, the ability to seek knowledge and to gain wisdom and better yourself through that way. Because that
keep the knowledge that you had back.
Exactly. So all of the lack of having the ability to gain knowledge, that is what has held us back throughout the centuries. That is what has deprived us of actually creating generational wealth. And it is the generational wealth that allows the most advancement. It gives the best head start to a child, to any group of people. And so that's the thing that I would like to see most for Black people going forward is having a strong adhesion to intellect, education, so that we can therefore build generational wealth.
I would also like to add, I'm less Black, by the way.
I can see.
But I don't think that should be solely your responsibility. I think as Americans, if you're saying that you want, African Americans to value education and really go in that direction, that's also on the rest of us to make sure that all schools and all educational potential is equal throughout the country, not just in pockets of better locations or richer locations or different spots, but we need to make sure that otherwise we're doing ourselves a disservice, not just different people, but the entire country is being done a disservice unless every school is the best school in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible otherwise.
You're absolutely right. And Cirroc, you're dead on. I mean, obviously for us to be able to, to move forward, to pursue, elevated goals and to become an integrated part of the society in terms of economic earning power and things like that. We need those opportunities afforded to us in order to be able to do it. I was thinking the other day, back to what is the saying? And you feed a man a fish, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish.
Teaching to fish. Mm-hmm.
Which is, when Elizabeth Warren was talking about reparations, I was thinking, that's not really what we need. It's not reparations. What you need, if it's reparations, is in the form of opportunity, whether it's economic or educational opportunity. That's where the resources need to go. If you give somebody a check for, I don't know, whatever amount it is.
It's temporary.
I don't know how you're going to figure all that out just in terms of paperwork and, whatever. But, just you give them the opportunity to earn their own money, to earn their own future, to build their own future. That to me is more important. And that's where it needs to happen. It needs to have whether there's the availability of affordable college, and I mean affordable, and public schools that are stronger, that are more financed, that are better quality, and opportunities for people to learn. And I know that the tech that we have nowadays, when where it's going, is going to make some of that a lot easier. Should bring the cost down of education, but you also have to have the opportunity, and that's just not us. I mean, just as a country as a whole, people are going to need jobs, man. People are going to need gigs in order to survive. If we send everything overseas, they're just not going to be those jobs. If those jobs are going to change into something different other than a just highly skilled labor force, you're going to have something else that's going to give somebody something to do, with your degree or with your education or with your training or whatever it is it might be. What are those jobs going to be in the future? What is it going to be? Is it going to be mining data? Is it going to be something else? What's it going to be? And those have to be the people who are in charge. Sure as hell ain't me. I already have a job. So
you've got a lot of jobs, actually.
People who run for office to be leaders. Barack Obama's the people who are the politicians, who are the people who work all this stuff out. God bless them. You can have that job, but that is their job. Their job is to look forward. Their job is to put together policies that benefit people 20 years from now, not tomorrow, 20 years from now, out into the future. How would we help the people who need, these opportunities? And it is about opportunity. Open the freaking door so we can go through it.
Yeah.
Have the chance to be able to prove ourselves, have a chance to be able to better our lives.
I recently read, sorry to interrupt you, but I recently read an article that said that Twitter and Jack Dorsey, as well as the founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, are moving their headquarters to Africa. And a lot of tech companies are starting to move to Africa. And I think that's going to create a tremendous amount of opportunities for
my goodness,
for Black people in Africa to get educated in the areas of these kinds of technology that will become essential to us moving forward. So I think that's a real critical element as far as educating us in the things that matter in the future.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're really right. It's the difference, like what Tim's saying, it's the difference between a temporary check
and an opportunity,
something that's more long-term, like opportunity and education
for you and your children. And we don't know, like I said, the majority of jobs, I'm talking about the United States, and we've started getting into Africa and some of the other countries like India. I mean, where there's just what are these people going to do? What are these people going to be able to do? What opportunity and chances? What types of jobs are they going to have? Is it rebuilding the infrastructure and improving the infrastructure of the African continent? Or is it data mining? Is it something to do with high tech this or high tech that? Whatever that, we have to figure out and determine where that's going to go. I mean, I think it could have a lot to do with environmental things that we're going to have to deal with. We have global warming. Could it be reclamation plants? Could it be solar power, solar energy installations all over the continent? Could it be this? All those are jobs, man. All of those are gigs. All of those are putting people to work and in order to clean up the planet. I mean, that could be the next major industry that employs, millions and millions of people just to get that done, because we're going to have to survive, the stress on the planet that is forthcoming. It ain't like it's not going to happen. It is coming. And we're going to deal with all that stuff. And a lot of that's going to have to be dealt with new technological breakthroughs and some kind of engineering projects that allow us to do so. And that's where I think everybody has a job. And not only that, it's a job that actually is one that benefits humanity as a whole.
Hey, Cirroc, did it say did it say where in Africa they're thinking?
It mentioned places like Ethiopia. That's why it came up on my queue.
On your radar,
yeah. All things Ethiopia kind of pop up in my purview. But no, they were also talking about other places like Kenya, Nairobi, and Ghana. So there's interest in setting up these new companies. Like I said, Twitter is moving one of its headquarters to one of these places in Africa, and they've already, for example, Ethiopia is one of the world leaders in computer programming, and some of the software engineers that designed this Sophia, the artificial human that was going to Saudi Arabia and all these places as artificial intelligence with the human look. A lot of that software was designed by Ethiopians. So we have a lot of intelligent, college graduated, very smart scientists, doctors coming out of Ethiopia, and also in Nigeria as well. There's a lot of intelligent people coming out of the universities there.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing how we can get involved in the computer.
Wow, that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so we only have a few minutes left. I did want to ask a couple final questions about Nichelle. Tim, as far as I know, you worked with Nichelle as a director and an actor on 2 projects of Gods and Men and Renegades. Are there any others that we don't know about?
Yeah, I worked with her on a short film a long, long time ago called Roddenberry on Patrol. And it was a short film about the origins of Gene Roddenberry's selling Star Trek to the networks. And it was a sort of tongue-in-cheek sort of parody. And she actually played a receptionist outside the studio exec's office. And she had the headphones on, and she was trying to get a hold of somebody on there. And we put the sound of the communicating, the original sound of the communicator going through. It was very funny. We had a couple lines in there that were, basically made her look like Uhura, but she was the receptionist outside thing. It was very funny. Walter came to in it as well. It was a lovely little project. I enjoyed doing it, and this was even I think it was pre-cell phones. Or there were not cell phones.
There was a time.
Yeah, there was a time.
Yeah.
And
what did we do?
It was so much fun, and we really enjoyed it a lot. That was back in the day. That was the very first project I worked with her on. So she was wonderful. And I do want to give a shout out to my condolences for the family of Aron. I was absolutely stunned when I came back from Las Vegas this past August. I had just seen him. I just said hello to him. We were talking, goofing around, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And it comes down to Cirroc, we were talking about earlier. I mean, you have the paths we choose. We can choose a path to go on. We just don't know what's going to be down that path. We can look back and we can see everything in 100% 20/20 hindsight, but that front path, we just don't know. We don't know the people. We don't know when things are going to occur to ourselves or anybody we know or anybody that's close to us. It just happens when it happens, and it just catches you every single time. It's like, oh my God, there's that transition that's been made from this lifetime forward. We don't, and you can't do anything about it. There is nothing you can do about it. Today, there's nothing you can do about it. 4 centuries from now, or 3 centuries from now, or even 2 centuries from now, that may be a different situation. Very well will be a different situation. All of this we're talking about in terms of, life and death, it will be manipulated and controlled by us. That is going to happen. And what kind of culture will that be when people are no longer dying? They're living for 200 years. You see what I'm saying?
People are going to be yelling at clouds. They're going to be like, "Get off my lawn!" They're going to be like 300 years old.
The wheelchair industry will be out of business.
Will be booming.
Will be out of business. Yeah,
will be gone out of business. The hospital. I don't know what the hospitals are going to do. At the end of the day, they're just going to start growing all of our organs. They're going to replace the final hurdle would be the brain. They'll figure that out too. The spinal cord. They'll figure all of that out. Cancer. What was that? Oh my God! In the old days, they used to what? They used to operate on people. Oh, that's gone. Everything is gone. Everything will transition. It will evolve, and it will be very different in a society in which people do not die. Very different.
Hey Tim, can you give us? You did mention Aron, and we appreciate you mentioning our brother. Can you give us a few words about Aron as a person, just from your own perspective?
Aron was a character. That was a character. There's not going to be any dead air when you're standing next to Aron. There is no pause. There is no awkward silence.
No.
Next to Aron. Aron's going to keep you on your toes, man. Very much the most gregarious character I've ever known. And he was fun to work with. Worked with him on Blade of Honor. And I was looking forward to working with him on something else. I'm working on now maybe for 2020, 2021. And I was going to give him a call. Say, Aron, you want to do this for me? He is so cool. He's very easy to work with, pleasant to work with. He was a smart actor. You know, he knew what he was doing. He would come up with some things, and it's just I'm going to miss him. It just is uncanny how, you know, people in your circle of your life, you know, if they get sick and they recover, then that's temporary. If they get into an accident, they get all banged up, they heal, they get better, you still see them. When they pass away, they are gone. That gone is just, it's just, I can't tell you. I mean, I don't, I've experienced it about 5 or 6, 8 times over the last 10 years. And it's starting to wear on me a little bit
Mm.
because the finality of that is so powerful. It's powerful. You know, and I, I'm not a superstitious person. I'm not, you know, like I said, I'm kind of based in science more than anything else, but there's something that you cannot quantify in any kind of equation or numbers or whatever stats. You just can't. It's a feeling. It's something that really bothers you. It gets to you when somebody is gone. You will never ever see that person again. You will never speak to that person again. That's it, man. And especially
Yeah.
when it happens suddenly.
Yeah.
Like if someone's old or they're getting, you know, they're going to pass away, then you know that's coming. You know, if they get sick or get an illness, a major illness or something, you know that might be a possibility. But when it happens like this, that's I don't know. That's really disturbing to me. It
Mm.
really bothers me. And there's nothing I can do, nothing you can do about it, except maybe, you know, appreciate the moments that it's not happening. You know.
Yeah, Aaron definitely gave us a lot of moments to appreciate too. So we were
Just
fortunate there. We had a lot of quality times with him.
yeah.
And before we go, give us everybody at home that maybe has never met Nichelle or never worked with Nichelle. Can you give them a sense of who she is as a person and how important really she was to the history of our society?
Well, she was a very obviously from a cultural standpoint, she was a pioneer in her field. She was an example to all of us as African American citizens, and also in terms of the business, being actors and writers and directors and things like that. She was such a pioneer for all of us in that respect, and I have to thank her for that. And also as an actress to work with, she was wonderful to work with. She really gave her all
Mm,
in front of the camera, and she was dedicated to her craft and a true professional. Um, she was wonderful, really wonderful.
amazing human. Hey, and we gotta run. I think Cirroc may have just
Thank
lost
you.
connection, but he'll probably come back in just a second. But we know you have a new music video out,
Yeah. Yes.
and it's really cool, especially for those of us that think that somebody's always watching you. You know, what's it called again?
It's called We.
That's right. We've posted all over our social media. Check it out. Tim Russ. Bill Burchell does the music on it. He also works with the Star Trek Rat Pack,
Yes, he
and
does.
he tours with you. You're playing tonight at the
Yep.
Kibitz Room.
Gibbets room. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for giving us great projects like Renegades and great projects like Of Gods and Men and all the other things that you've been directing. We saw you in the Orville. We saw you in Supergirl. You're everywhere. Krypton, was it?
Yeah. Well, on Krypton. Yes.
Krypton, that's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Check him out online. Just Google Tim Russ. Check out his website. You can see all of his appearances, website appearances and band appearances. Really rocking time when you see him play live.
Thank you.
Uh,
Very
Thanks
much.
so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye bye now.
Thank you.